Portable anti-tank weapons became ever deadlier, and the dedicated Mechanized Infantry Fighting Vehicle emerged. The latter was designed to both transport infantry and fight tanks. The Cold War, however, was undoubtedly the heyday of the tank. The 5 Arab-Israeli wars were particularly important testing grounds for a variety of equipment, including American, British, and Soviet tanks. The Arabs and the Israelis became guinea pigs for the much-feared Third World War between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, which fortunately never came to pass. Just 3 years after the Second World War ended, the State of Israel came into being. The newly formed Israeli armed forces had to create their armored forces from scratch, but these quickly helped them gain victory in 1948 over their hostile Arab neighbors. The creation of the elite Israeli Defense Forces famed Armored Corps is literally a tale of an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman who begged, stole, and borrowed armored vehicles to help defend the fledgling Jewish state. These early experiences stood them in good stead for the subsequent Arab-Israeli wars, during which the Israelis had to rely on quality to counter the Arabs' vast quantities of Soviet-supplied tanks and other weaponry. Shortly after the First Arab-Israeli War, the Communist North Koreans, equipped with surplus Soviet T-34 tanks, almost overran South Korea in 1950. Following the invasion, the North Korean People's Army's tanks swiftly dominated the battlefield. The South had no tanks and few effective anti-tank weapons. The outcome was predictable, and the South Korean army was sent reeling. The South Korean and American forces had to conduct a rapid build-up and a major amphibious assault at Incheon to turn the tide. Initially, the American light tanks rushed into South Korea proved no match for the T-34s. Field guns firing over open sights and Second World War vintage bazookas were about all they had to stop the North's marauding tanks. Once the U.S. Sherman, Pershing, and Patton tanks began to arrive in numbers, supported by dominant air power, the T-34's reign came to an end. However, there were few full-scale tank battles, and tanks on both sides soon found themselves relegated to their original role of providing infantry support or acting as mobile artillery and pillboxes. Just as the conflict in Korea ended in armed stalemate, so the Middle East once more spiraled into war. Britain, France, and Israel attacked Egypt in 1956 to reclaim the newly nationalized Suez Canal. Operation Kadesh saw Israeli tanks successfully overrun Egyptian defenses in the Sinai Desert. This operation convinced the Israelis that they needed to form divisional-sized armored units. Alarmed at the enormous military build-up by its Arab neighbors, Israel in 1967 launched a remarkable preemptive war, and its armored forces ended up fighting simultaneously on 3 fronts in the Egyptian Sinai, the Jordanian West Bank, and the Syrian Golan Heights, north of the Sea of Galilee. These presented very different combat conditions for Israel's armor. Quite miraculously, however, within just 6 days, the Israelis had won a resounding victory. As well as geography, technology proved a key factor in the tank battles of the Arab-Israeli wars. In 1967, in a historic confrontation, the British Centurion and Soviet T-54/55 went head-to-head for the very first time. The Arabs' T-54-55s could cross soft ground, which the Israelis' Centurions could not, but the latter could kill armor beyond the range of the Soviet tanks and carried more ammunition. In a standoff fight, it would win hands down. This helped neutralize the Arabs' superior numbers. In 1973, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria tried to overwhelm Israel using enormous tanks forces, resulting in some of the biggest tank engagements ever seen. In the Sinai, the Egyptians relied on sheer weight of fire and their superiority in armor, artillery, and new Soviet-supplied anti-tank guided weapons